It is 2024 rolling into 2025. There's many things going on in the world, but one of the things that has been constant is security. We're here today to kind of get a landscape review of what has happened in 2024 and what's coming in 2025. I know it dates the show putting a date, but that doesn't matter. Security is security. It's here to stay. And I got a unique guest for you today, a very good guest for you today. Coming up next. Chris, riding the sidecar here. You brought Unique into the show today. You want to give us a quick introduction on Unique, his background, how you know him, and then we'll get to know Unique.
Yeah. So Unique's one of those guys that I've had the pleasure of working with since I joined here at Microsoft. Really thoughtful guy, great leader, just incredible person to work with, and a really great thought leader too, which hopefully, our listeners and watchers get that impression today too. I guess one thing to add there is that, we want to bring these special guests in that just help enhance the show, right? And get other perspectives, because people only want to listen to us so much, right? Without further ado, Unique, why don't you tell us a little more about yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Chris. And trust me, I did not pay Chris for that kind introduction, but as Chris said, Unique Glover. I have the privilege of working along with Chris at Microsoft. So just a little bit about me. I am a managing director here at Microsoft. I lead up our technical specialist team for manufacturing. So U.S. manufacturing is one of our commercial industry verticals in Microsoft. So I have the privilege of leading up our technical specialist team that focuses on servicing our 400 plus customers here at Microsoft under the manufacturing for semiconductors, process manufacturing, discrete manufacturing. My team of technical pre-sales focuses on our security platform, which is really our threat protection and cloud security, which spans over M365 and Azure. So a little bit about me, practitioner, been a security practitioner for well over 23 years. So Michael, I know you, similar background, and started in IT. This is what I do. I started out very young, just basically around technology, very curious, love problem solving. I'm a date myself, so I started out doing Atari 2600, Commodore 64.
Love it.
ColecoVision is like my name to game, just from a gaming perspective from young. And then obviously as I got older, through great mentorship, focused more discreetly on computer science and systems. Did my undergrad in computer science and computer information systems, and did a graduate degree in cybersecurity and public policy. So very, very fond of technology and what it's provided me. Love Microsoft as a platform, as a provider, but I have worked in the enterprise space. I've worked across the different specialties and products and solutions. And so in terms of security, as you mentioned, Michael, a little bit before, it transcends product, it transcends vendors, it transcends industries. It's something that's ubiquitous. Yep. And something that our customers and really everyone, from customers and consumers, deal with every day.
That's brilliant. And, one of the things that excited me, and we had some, obviously some pre-gaming getting, I got to know you prior to the show and stuff, and you are an impressive individual for what you have, what you know, and your approach. So thank you so much. Like Chris said, we want to bring this type of individual like Unique is to the show, because it is special to be able to share that brain with our listeners and beyond. So thank you for that. We want to dive just a couple minutes, a little deeper. So, the getting to know you section, first time on, so we're gonna grill you a little bit. Latest book you read, or audiobook too. Audiobooks work.
Latest book is an audiobook. It's actually I love kind of the action thrillers. Or the latest one is called True Believer by Jack Carr. Okay. So if you like The Terminal List on Amazon, I was really fond of the show. Kind of started reading the book, and this is the second series to that book.
Okay. Awesome. Your playlist. What's on your playlist? What type of
Oh,
music's on your playlist?
wow. I'm eclectic. I like all around. I'm a big 90s alt rock, Incubus, Nirvana, Linkin Park. What's the latest? I'm probably grooving to uh probably The Weekend is the latest
Okay,
of the playlist.
that's awesome. Did you know that YouTube music is a genre that has its own playlists on like Spotify? Did you know that? I did not know that
I
till
did not know.
recently.
No, I
Like
didn't. I didn't.
I'm watching some maker, some woodworker, and I hear the song. I was like, that's really cool. I'm gonna Shazam that. And all of a sudden, I'm like, there's like playlists for this stuff.
I did not know that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have to check that out.
check it out. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but it's a roll of the dice. So yeah, DC or Marvel?
Marvel.
Marvel,
Yeah.
specifically, which is your favorite Marvel character?
X-Men. Yeah, I grew up a
X-Men.
big comics fan. X-Men was it. X-Men, X-Force
Yep,
were two. And I collected comic books and comic book cards, but X-Men was still is my favorite.
that's awesome. Um, you get to go out. You have a night to yourself. You're going to go out to the pub. You're going to stay home and read. You're going to go do a hobby. What are you going to do?
Likely to pub. Likely to pub.
Very good. Very
To
good.
reduce that stress.
Yeah, I know. I know. Over a couple of glasses of whiskey.
Yep.
Indeed.
Yep. Absolutely. So I will invite you. I'm going to do something in 2025. It's called the IT Happy Hour. So once a month, I'm going to get a group of people, and we're going to get our own beverages. We're going to all come to online because we're scattered about, and just
Mhm.
talk tech casually. So if you want to be in, well, if you want an invite, we'll get you going.
Let's do it.
That's awesome. All right, let's dive into some stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you have shared some information with me. Thank you for giving me that information around security and Microsoft. Obviously, this is right in your wheelhouse. So you have it kind of dialed in what's happened in 2024. So you're at the pulse of manufacturing, and you're seeing what people are doing and what's happening to those organizations. This is a very broad question. What has happened in 2024 in your mind and in your experiences with security?
What hasn't? It's been a
True.
and seriously, it's been a year of AI. AI has been so prevalent and top of mind from all walks in different facets of the business. As Chris can attest to, all of our customers are really trying to understand how to adapt and adopt AI. And that's even so with security. Our security operations teams that we've seen from our customers are really trying to one, figure out how to use AI within their enterprise environment, but also how
Hmm.
to protect against AI, if that even it makes sense.
Oh,
It's
absolutely. Yeah.
because the business moves at a different speed typically than IT and security, and security has to really adapt. We can't stifle innovation. We can't stifle adoption. So what does that mean? Is how do we really address the needs of the business, the demand of the business, and do it securely? So a lot of our customers across the enterprise have been, concerned with data privacy, data security, which is the crux of AI and reasoning over the data within the enterprise to make good, useful sense of it from a business process perspective. So that's been primarily 90% of the topic of discussions for the past year. Started from generative AI. Yes, we can do prompt engineering. Let's reason over our data. And now how do we actually commoditize that and make it as part of a business process to automate and provide value to our customers. So with that brings challenges. Data privacy and security have been top of mind as again, and really protecting against sensitive data leakage through those AI processes and systems.
Yeah.
So that's been a majority of the conversations that I've been a part of, high level conversations, and even just from an engineering perspective. Now that you have the buy and build model, you have Copilot, obviously from a Microsoft perspective, and we have Gemini and others that are out
Oh
there that
yeah,
do the
Gemini.
same model.
Yeah.
But the crux of it is how to protect enterprise data, how to make it consumable from from an enterprise perspective, so that users can get value from that, but do it in a sensitive and a secure piece frame of mind. So
Yeah.
that's been top of mind for customers. That's been the trend wave, as well as from a security, how to modernize and protect against these evolving attacks that now are present with AI from a automation perspective, from an incident response perspective. So those are two of the main things, really
Big
centered
areas.
around data security and privacy, and then obviously protecting against these evolving threats inside of the ecosystem.
For sure. Chris, you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, excuse me, sorry. So I was recently reading that Microsoft is able to thwart an astonishing 600 million identity attacks daily, right? I
Mhm.
mean, obviously that number is just unimaginable, right?
Mhm.
But how how should companies think about the various types of identity-based attacks, and really, what strategy should they have to kind of get ahead of that?
Mm. That's a very good question, and Michael, I'll kind of defer to you also to chime in. I would love your perspective coming
Sure.
from coming from your perspective, from your side of the owl. So identity-based attacks, it's really the crux of what we see from the enterprise with our customers. It's really one identifying first let's take a step back in terms of identity-based attacks. Identities can mean a number of things, and we simply, we label personas as identities with people, enterprise workers, information workers, consumers can be identities, anything that has a digital representation of who you are, and that can also even cascade to the devices that you use and the assets that you access. But these attacks can come from a number of different vehicles and forms, from phishing attacks to going through your email to try to have you click on malicious email and content, or trying to really breach your password, which is something that's been prevalent in the industry with password attacks, where weak passwords, and really the goal of that is to infiltrate the enterprise, to compromise your credentials so that an attacker can get access to sensitive information. So we see a large number of those attacks. Luckily, with the scale of AI and some of the data and tooling that we have from a security platform, we're able to circumvent that. And that can also be patterned along with what enterprises can do within their own cyber operations using our tooling or other companies' tooling. So one of the things that you first need to do, and companies need to take stock of, is really inventory. When we talk about risk management and just identifying where your risk posture is, your risk posture from an enterprise is really inventory and understanding who's at risk. And there are different ways you can do that. If you're following the zero trust methodology, it really comes into discovering what is your high valued assets, who are your high valued people, but also having basic protections in place. This is where we talk about things that you can quickly introduce inside of your environment, like multi-factor, things to strengthen your passwords, or even go passwordless is something
Fido.
that we're talking about recently, and we've been talking about for a number of years, of really going passwordless and getting rid of passwords to circumvent and kind of get around that attack path with passwords. And Michael, I know that you're big on passwordless and FIDO and some of those secure adoptions. Would love to hear your input on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest adoption barrier with FIDO and passwordless is a legacy mindset. So
Mhm.
shedding some of the traditional policies and procedures of 8 characters, mixed case. That's your
Mhm.
safe. That's not necessarily the case. We know that. So there are bunch of conversations I have all the time around this space, and the first thing I say is, yeah, you want to layer in some of this cool technology, maybe security co-pilot or some other kind of
Mhm.
a tooling. Let's stop first and look at the blocking and tackling. Let's look at the basics. How are you handling your users?
Mhm.
Are all your users treated the same? Are you
Mhm.
doing privileged management identity? Because that's a great way to stop access to inside resources without getting that go ahead and affirmation from someone. So there's a bunch of basic blocking and tackling that I usually try to make short up to kind of ready an organization for, okay, now let's talk about FIDO keys. Let's talk about passwordless. Let's talk about authenticator access, hello for business, things like that. Because if you don't have those basic blocking and tackling done, you're just going to be spinning your wheels and either trying to boil the ocean to make a cup of tea to try to get this project across the line, but that's not effective. Let's stop and handle things we need to handle. So I agree with all the things you said, like, the security aspects that are coming in, and the threat force. We got 4 major threat nation states that are hitting us daily: Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Now, we're seeing a little bit of stuff. I saw a bunch of users accounts try to be taken over from North Korea, which is like, how did that happen? But like when I go to the M365 portal, we put in identity protection for key individuals. That's something so basic to do. So to your point, yes, we need to know and inventory everything we have, but we also need to map that to a persona type, because everyone's not created equal. Somebody can easily go to LinkedIn and find out who the VD level person is for an organization and target an attack towards them. So putting that basic stuff in kind of helps shore that up. Then we layer on the tools to kind of help smack it down or be more effective.
And Michael, you mentioned one thing that I think is important, and not all things are created equal, and not all companies are at the same maturity as what we would hope them to be. And the reality is that the environments are dynamic. Different companies have different investments inside of their cybersecurity budgets and strategy, but the basic level is identity. Identity is the attack plane that a lot of our attackers that you mentioned, nation state attackers, are going with really doing reconnaissance and understanding who are these high value targets at these companies, and finding ways to use social engineering tactics to get information to really bypass some of those basic controls that we mentioned. But so it's impervious to a lot of companies, and we've seen it across the enterprise space, to really take stock into learning and incorporating and kind of codifying those fundamentals. Identity protection at this point, to me, is core to modernizing any cyber strategy, is making sure you have a good accountance of your high value assets, your MVPs within the company, and also having a good strategy for protection for your enterprise workers, using things like conditional access, using data points that can be used to really authenticate or strengthen the authentication process for a user, really investing time and looking into passwordless or phish resistant multi-factor authentication as ways to really get beyond those 600 million identity attacks that Chris mentioned earlier. So that's fundamentally core to really getting in front and establishing a core baseline to a further strengthen security posture.
For sure. One thing, I'm going to toss Chris in on the mix here, that I kind of layer in sometimes when we're talking about knowing our assets and helping to protect them. I think data classification is often overlooked as something that can help, because if you classify a specific type of data and where it can go and who can see it, you're building walls around your jewels of your company, and you're making sure that even if somebody does have access, maybe that particular account doesn't have access, or that data can't move, it's not transient. There's different things like that. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, to both your points, right? Starting with the basics, and unfortunately, we just don't see enough organizations considering that part of the basics. I can't count the number of customers over the years in the enterprise space that I've spoken to who really just aren't sure, where their data lives, what kind of data is being brought into their environments, and so if you don't even have that baseline, to how do you apply labels? How do you do classification? And granted, AI is helping with that quite a bit. We're identifying if there's personal identifiable information, that type of stuff almost automatically at this point: credit cards, social security numbers, email addresses, all that stuff. But a lot of times when we talk about critical business data, patent information, the secret sauce, right? I'm guessing Coca-Cola doesn't have, their recipe in a OneDrive, right? And so, I think that if certainly we could get them to apply that label, sorry, not a sponsor, not speaking to the customer, never talk to them. I want to make sure that's clear. Just using it as an example. But if we could give them assurances that, okay, once you classify this data, and then it automatically puts guardrails around who can see it, where it can go, and all that type of stuff, it's pretty critical. And even internally here, now that we've seen sort of automatic labeling when you create a document. And I think by default internally here, it becomes classified for internal only. And then, you got to go back and it's a bit of an adjustment for everybody, even here, to go back and change the permissions so that you can send it out to a customer and things like that. But I'd rather have that rather than having some kind of data leakage unintentionally.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the other things along that line too is one of our topic points here is like SMB, mid-tier, enterprise. It's a lot easier for an enterprise to say, here's the policy, here's the plan, let's turn the bits on, we got the licensing, go. Mid-tier sometimes has a little bit of a struggle because they are sometimes caught between, I just want E3 to get my people on, I don't need all the security stuff. So having those different types of SMB, mid-tier, and enterprise, one of the things, and I've said this before in previous shows, is like Microsoft has solutions for all three of those. Sometimes it's the same solution with different capacity or capabilities across them. But like you were mentioning, Chris, it's like, you can't just have a pile of data and not know what it is. I mean, you can classify it all secure or high secure, but you're not going to be able to do anything with it.
Right,
so
right, exactly.
Yeah. Are you seeing any of that with yours, Unique?
Yeah, and I was going to say, just kind of, there are a couple of things that you touched on, which I think is pretty critical, and data classification, for example, data governance itself, lifecycle management. It's not an easy
No.
process, and there's a reason why companies struggle with data classification, data labeling, identifying sensitive data, because sometimes you have companies who are, they have legacy debt, they have technical debt, there are systems and there are repositories out there. You don't know what you don't know. And a large part of that is discovering the data, for one, understanding where these assets, where these repositories reside. But also, it goes beyond tooling. It's now a business decision. It's business planning, and it's governance and it's risk management. And that's kind of the crux of everything, is like, what if you don't know your data, how do you know the value of the data, what that value of the data is to your organization? And that's what we see, that the tooling is great, but I can't minimize the importance of really incorporating this as part of an overall enterprise governance strategy that includes really quantifying the risk of the data. If something were to happen to this data, if there was a confidentiality breach or an integrity breach, or if this data was unavailable, what would that cost? What would be that cost to our business? And that really is fundamentally part of the building blocks of really the classification strategy, and understanding, like, hey, this is what we need to do as a baseline. We want to make sure that we have certain retention activities related to this data. We want to make sure that data is purged, or that we're notified as to who has access to this data. So it is a crawl, walk, run journey, and you don't have to do it by yourself. And that's one of, even in the enterprise space, a lot of our customers will leverage different partners, managed service providers in that space. And I would imagine in the SMB, SMC space, that's really how companies can really fast track their adoption, is working with partners who can do it for them. That's what they do day in and day out, to really operationalize and really get companies to where they need to go without having to really crunch and try to think that they can do it internally with maybe a lack of resources that they may have in their staff. So there are companies that can do it for you, that can help you out with this crawl, walk, run journey. Data classification is complex, but as we talk, and as we look into 2025, it is something that I think, underlying to AI and adoption, is something that every company will have to address. If they're not addressing it now, they will have to address it in 2025, because the proliferation, just the expansion of AI, what's happening with companies really fast tracking adoption, you're going to need to have a good data classification strategy. You're going to need to know where your data resides. You're going to have to know how to protect that data and how to govern that as it gets, as it gets used within AI for the next foreseeable future.
For
Yeah.
sure. And sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, the key thing that I think Unique said there, that I would, have anybody, if you're looking for a specific thing to take away, is working with the business. Anybody who's ever heard me speak, anybody who's ever read any of my stuff, anything like that, it's always partner with the business, right? IT should not be making these decisions alone. Don't get me wrong. They don't want to do it, right? I got my day job. I don't want to deal with all this. But the thing is that once you have those members of the business on the side, don't bring in your CEO, right? That's going to be a problem, right? But once you have some of those areas that need to be looked at within even other senior leaders, it's critical to get their input. First of all, it's going to get them on your side, right? They're going to help you build that together. And second of all, it's going to save you a lot of headaches down the road, right? Because if you don't consult them, right, they're going to come back to you and say, you broke my stuff, And so, I think that's a key thing to think about.
And the other thing to add on to that is as you're both mentioning, getting these business partners with IT to come along and form that we committee, not the us committee. Like, we are together. It's not a they, them. You form this committee, but you got to get it across the line, right? You got to get these projects, they got to be funded. And, one of the things I like to think that I do pretty decent is get organizations to fund things, because, I'll go in and I'll pull the stats up and say, hey, this is all the numbers of attacks and look at all this stuff. And your average, C-level person, V-level person will be like, okay, well, we haven't had that problem yet. But then when we pull up what your competitors are doing, we say, look at what they're doing from a security posture. They have a strategic advantage over you. And that's something that a lot of organizations don't look at. Being good stewards of data, being good stewards of people's identity, having our arms around affordable tooling, ones that are not overcomplicated, that do the job, but are really to the point. You're not lost in billions of logs in 10 days after an event to have not an idea. These kind of tools that, like, the three of us talk about, are very pointed tools. They solve business problems and they keep your people and your data and your system secure. That's a strategic advantage. Your competitor goes down because they've been breached. You are stepping into their space now. It's an opportunity for you. So yeah, let's look at things from a security perspective from a different angle. Let's not just look at, oh yeah, we're checking the box for cyber insurance, which I get asked to do a lot. Just get us the minimum to check the box so we can get cyber insurance. I fight back and say, you want to have this as a strategic advantage in your business. This is a key thing for you and your people. So that's one area. And you touched on it, technical debt. Unique. There's old code, there's legacy processes and procedures out there. All of this is open to attack. If I had a nickel for every time in 2024 I came across an Exchange 2010 server, I'd have a little sack of nickels. I'd be able to go buy not just a candy bar, I'd be able to go buy a full-blown coffee at the nearest coffee shop. It's prevalent. If I had a nickel for every time I saw 2008 R2 with SQL 2008 on it, I'd have a mound of nickels, because nobody wants to do that project. That's not a strategic advantage for you're at risk. You're at risk for losing data. You're at risk of compromising data. And if you're in a specially protected area like healthcare, banking, finance, government, CMMC, you're at risk for falling out of compliance and having some of your data wind up on shores we don't want it to. So not to play the scare you. No, it's let's build you up and make you strategically ahead of your partners and doing the good stuff.
Oh, and it's real. Even Microsoft is subject to a lot of what you mentioned with old code legacy systems, and we recognize that. We at Microsoft, we've published the Secure Future Initiative, which is our transparency, our some of the pillars that we're doing to revamp our strategy internally to address things like legacy debt, technical debt, and old code that may be sitting out there that may be subject to to vulnerabilities. And this is public information. This is stuff that I'm sure Chris has shared or will share with customers as to how we're eating our own dog food and taking our own advice. And this is something that's important to us. Brad Smith, our president, was in front of a congressional hearing months ago where he talked about the advancements and the fact that security is a priority for all of us within Microsoft. And part of that is addressing old code. Old code is a part of one of our pillars, is how do we secure by default? And a lot of that is really addressing, one, discovering this old code, revamping and modernizing that old code to factor into modern code that we can leverage, and we can do threat modeling, and we can do things to uncover vulnerabilities, whether it's in modules or dependencies and so forth. So it's definitely prevalent that, when we talk about this software development lifecycle from a security practitioners and just security strategy, is how to shift left, how to really get to that starting point where security is now baked into that development lifecycle, where developers are now coding securely and deploying secure software to mitigate some of those risks that can happen after it's deployed to production. So that's
Absolutely.
definitely top of mind, and that's something, again, that it's from an industry perspective will be something that we all have to adjust to. Microsoft has released with its Secure Future Initiative steps that we've taken so that other companies can adopt that, whether large, medium, small. You can adopt those same philosophies and methodologies to secure code from the start and make that part of your development lifecycle.
Yeah, and rolling, DevOps, secure DevOps, that whole mentality was brought up years ago, and so many organizations would be like, "Oh, I'll attend the session for the bagel," but then they never really did it. So now's the
Yeah.
time, right? The time is nigh. Yeah, that's great stuff. One of the other things I want to throw out there too. Not normally a Microsoft conversation, but it will be. Linux is, if the distros, people set it and forget it, Linux, and they're like, oh yeah, it's Linux, it's secure. Old distros are vulnerable. You need to have things against that. And I say all the time, among the top things deployed in Azure are Linux workloads, right? So there's many Linux workloads. You need to make sure that you're on top of the same policies, procedures, and patching. And there's tooling that Microsoft offers, especially if you're in Azure or even on-prem, that transcend Windows. It goes, it seeps over into the Linux space massively, right? So like, don't be afraid. Azure's not just for Windows boxes. If you're not there yet, I'll help you get you there. That's my other job. But here, just letting you know that this tooling does transcend just Windows boxes, right? You mentioned something, and I think this is where we're getting close to time here, so it might be a good way to wrap. Just looking over at my show notes here, you mentioned frameworks and tooling and things that can help, smaller or lesser aware organizations potentially, get jump started. So we're going to have a couple more upcoming shows. That's provided you like being with us here today, Unique.
Absolutely, you guys are the best.
Thank you. So we're going to have two more shows coming up. We're going to have a security framework show. So if you are, in management IT or nuts and bolts IT, spinning wrenches, super important for you to attend that, because it kind of we're going to kind of talk through some of the frameworks that are out there, what Microsoft's approach is to having security frameworks, and I'm putting my butt on the line here. I'll come up with a list of toolings for the downstairs note stuff to kind of give you some head start on that. But then one of my most favoriteest topics ever is posture management. We're going to have a show on posture management. I cannot tell you how important that is to have some posture management stuff involved with security and understand. It's more than just understanding. It's not an easy button, but it's pretty darn close if you're doing certain somethings. So, I'm looking forward to that. If you're looking forward to that, you looking forward to that, Chris?
You betcha.
All right, sweet. Any final thoughts on 24-25, Unique? And then we'll toss it to Chris for his.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting year for business. Not even just security. I think security has been growing year over year, just in terms of awareness. I think us security practitioners know the importance of security, but I think it's now being up leveled to a business issue and a topic that's addressed at the C-level, board level. So it's important for us to really, as Chris mentioned, to really align with the business, make sure that the business priorities are our priorities from a security perspective,
Yep.
and make sure that there's full alignment. And I think AI going into the next year is certainly top of mind for the business, but not only the business, for security practitioners in our cyber operations teams. So making sure that we're adjusting to and adapting to the needs and
Yeah.
demands of AI and what that brings, and then obviously making sure that we're doing right for the business and protecting our high valued assets. So can't wait to see what happens in 2025, and we have great partnerships across the board to help our customers get to where they need to go.
That's fantastic. Chris, your thoughts? 24-25 security.
Oh, geez. I don't think the security conversation ever ends, does it? And I think that's the important point is how do we ensure that people are putting it at the top of their list? I mean, look, I can come in here and talk about how important your data is all day long, but this is related, right? And without that foundation, I think you're making a mistake. And so I really think that it should be part of everybody's New Year's resolution to really step back and take a look at their security posture. Get some pen testing done, right? Have an outside organization. There's no way that an organization can tell us that it's not valuable to them, to have somebody kind of expose their warts, right? Let's fess up to our mistakes of the past and move forward in a safe and secure way.
That's brilliant. So I'll give my final thoughts and then our outro here. So I'm going to combine it together. I typically don't use the word hopeful, but I will here. I'm hopeful that organizations are seeing the value that security provides. They're seeing it more as a cost overhead. I think that the conversations, if well tuned, from the right people like we have on the call today, will help organizations understand it's a strategic positioning to do things in the modern world by deploying tooling that protects your identity, protects your customer's identity, your data, and your systems. It's more than we just need to check the box. We understand that now as IT folk, and we're seeing that in the landscape of hiring. We're seeing this in the landscape of what spend looks like. We're not just buying appliances anymore and popping them in a rack saying we got it covered. We're changing the way we think, and we're changing our behaviors. I've seen that with organizations actually asking me to help facilitate that as opposed to brokering that as an idea. So I'm hopeful that this is a method and an approach businesses are going to stick with. Now, that being said, IT Tech Talk loves to hear back from you, loves to hear what your thoughts are. So we're going to have new branded pages. This is the new branded digital studio. So we love being here in this new studio. My old studio back there, but so we appreciate you as listeners and viewers. This will drop as a video first and audio second. We keep getting the request to make sure we get the audio out there just because people like treadmills and traffic commutes. So we'll make sure we get that out there for you. Just say hi to your dog for me because I love dogs. Have a good day, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.